Imagine a moment in time when the entire course of life on Earth balanced on a knife's edge. A period when our planet's biological systems faced a transformation so profound that it would determine which evolutionary paths survived and which disappeared forever. 252 million years ago, Earth experienced what scientists now recognize as the most significant biological transition in our planet's documented history. This isn't a story about catastrophe or destruction. This is a story about transformation, resilience, and the remarkable mechanisms that govern life on our planet. What researchers have discovered about this pivotal moment reveals something extraordinary about Earth's systems and the delicate processes that sustain the diversity of life we know today. Today, we're exploring the science behind this critical juncture in Earth's history, understanding the complex environmental processes that triggered it, and discovering why studying this ancient period provides crucial insights for our modern world. To understand the magnitude of what happened 252 million years ago, we need to step back in time and observe Earth as it existed during the late Permian period. Our planet looked fundamentally different then, both in its physical geography and its living systems. The continents were arranged in a massive supercontinent called Pangaea, stretching from pole to pole like a colossal puzzle piece assembled from landmasses we'd recognize today as Africa, South America, North America, Europe, and Asia. This continental configuration created unique weather patterns and ocean circulation systems that had remained stable for millions of years. The climate was considerably warmer than our modern world, with no ice caps covering the polar regions. Instead of the scattered continents and multiple ocean basins we know today, there was one enormous landmass surrounded by a single, planet-spanning ocean called Pangaea. This arrangement generated circulation patterns and seasonal rhythms unlike anything in our contemporary world. Life had been flourishing in this Permian environment for over 40 million years. The ocean supported ecosystems of remarkable complexity and diversity. Massive reef systems, constructed not by modern corals but by ancient organisms called rugose and tabulate corals, created underwater architecture that supported intricate food webs spanning thousands of species. These marine ecosystems included creatures that would seem fantastical today. Brachiopods, which superficially resemble modern clams but represent an entirely different evolutionary lineage, filtered nutrients from the water in enormous numbers. Trilobites, those iconic armored arthropods that had dominated marine environments for nearly 300 million years, continued their extraordinary success story in deep ocean habitats. On land, the story was equally remarkable. Forests of seed ferns and early conifers covered much of Pangaea's humid regions. These weren't the flowering plants that dominate modern landscapes, those wouldn't evolve for another 100 million years, but they created rich terrestrial ecosystems that supported increasingly sophisticated animal communities. Early reptiles were diversifying into forms that would eventually give rise to dinosaurs, though that evolutionary explosion remained in the future. Some had developed advanced thermoregulatory capabilities that gave them advantages in variable climates, while others were experimenting with specialized feeding strategies and complex social behaviors. What scientists find most significant about the pre-transition world is how robust and interconnected these biological systems had become. This wasn't a fragile biosphere struggling at the edge of viability. These were mature, well-established ecosystems that had developed intricate relationships between species over millions of years of coevolution. Here's what makes this period particularly important: life had reached unprecedented levels of specialization and interdependence. Predator-prey relationships had evolved sophisticated adaptations and counter-adaptations. Plant and animal communities had developed complex symbiotic partnerships, while marine and terrestrial ecosystems had created multi-layered networks of energy flow and nutrient cycling. Yet within this apparent stability lay the conditions that would soon trigger the most profound biological transformation in Earth's recorded history. The sequence of events that would reshape Earth's living systems began in what is now Siberia, with volcanic activity on a scale that dwarfs anything in recorded human experience. The Siberian Traps, as geologists now call this volcanic province, began releasing enormous quantities of lava, gas, and particulate matter into the atmosphere. To understand the magnitude of this volcanic episode, consider that it released enough material to cover the entire continental United States under several feet of lava. But unlike explosive eruptions that last days or weeks, this volcanic activity continued for hundreds of thousands of years, fundamentally altering atmospheric composition and global climate systems. The volcanic emissions included massive quantities of carbon dioxide, sulfur compounds, and other gases that began modifying Earth's atmospheric chemistry. Carbon dioxide levels rose dramatically, creating an enhanced greenhouse effect that increased global temperatures by as much as 10 degrees Celsius in some regions. What researchers discovered next reveals the interconnected nature of Earth's environmental systems. As atmospheric composition changed, ocean chemistry began shifting in ways that created cascading effects throughout marine ecosystems. Rising temperatures reduced the ocean's capacity to hold dissolved oxygen, while changing circulation patterns disrupted the distribution of nutrients and gases throughout marine environments. Here's why this moment mattered so much. The changes triggered feedback mechanisms that amplified the initial atmospheric modifications. As ocean temperatures rose, vast deposits of frozen methane on the seafloor began destabilizing, releasing additional greenhouse gases that accelerated warming trends. The warming also affected ocean circulation in ways that further reduced oxygen distribution. The deep ocean currents that had been carrying oxygen-rich water from polar regions to tropical areas began slowing down, creating vast regions of oxygen-depleted water that couldn't support most marine life. This process reveals something crucial about Earth's environmental systems. They're interconnected in ways that can amplify relatively small initial changes into planet-wide transformations. The volcanic activity in Siberia triggered atmospheric changes, which caused oceanic changes, which released additional greenhouse gases, creating a positive feedback loop that gained momentum over time. The biological response to these environmental shifts demonstrates the remarkable ways that life adapts to changing conditions, while also revealing the limits of adaptability when change occurs too rapidly for evolutionary processes to keep pace. In marine environments, the combination of rising temperatures, decreasing oxygen levels, and changing water chemistry created conditions that challenged the fundamental biological processes many organisms had evolved over millions of years. Species that had thrived in oxygen-rich, stable environments suddenly faced conditions that stretched their physiological capabilities beyond sustainable limits. The Great Reef ecosystems, which had taken millions of years to develop their complex architecture and community structures, proved particularly vulnerable to rapid environmental change. The organisms that built these reefs required specific water chemistry conditions to create and maintain their calcium carbonate structures. As ocean acidity increased and temperatures rose, these construction processes became increasingly difficult to sustain. What scientists find particularly revealing in the geological record is not just evidence of species disappearing, but patterns showing how different groups of organisms responded to the changing conditions. Some lineages showed remarkable resilience, adapting to new environmental conditions and even diversifying during the transition period. Others, despite millions of years of previous success, proved unable to adjust to the rapidly shifting conditions. On land, terrestrial ecosystems faced their own set of challenges as global weather patterns shifted and temperature ranges exceeded the tolerance levels of many plant and animal species. The massive forests that had characterized Permian landscapes experienced widespread stress as precipitation patterns changed and growing seasons shifted beyond optimal ranges for many species. The transformation process reveals something profound about the relationship between environmental change and biological innovation. While many established species and ecosystems face significant challenges, the changing conditions also created new ecological opportunities that would eventually be filled by organisms with different adaptive strategies. Here's what makes the biological response particularly fascinating. The transition wasn't simply a period of loss, but also a time of evolutionary experimentation. The groups that survived and thrived during and after the transition period often did so by developing new approaches to fundamental challenges like energy acquisition, reproduction, and environmental tolerance. The aftermath of this biological transformation created a fundamentally different world that would influence the trajectory of evolution for the following 250 million years. The early Triassic period that followed demonstrates something remarkable about life's capacity for recovery and innovation. Rather than taking millions of years to rebuild complex ecosystems, biological communities began reorganizing and diversifying relatively quickly in geological terms. Within a few million years, new types of marine and terrestrial ecosystems had emerged, often based on different organizational principles than their Permian predecessors. The groups that became dominant in this new world included the evolutionary ancestors of many organisms we recognize today. The archosaurs, which would eventually give rise to dinosaurs, crocodilians, and birds, emerged during this recovery period with physiological innovations that proved particularly well suited to the post-transition environment. In marine systems, new types of reef-building organisms evolved that proved more resilient to environmental fluctuations than their Permian predecessors. These communities developed different approaches to ecosystem construction that emphasized flexibility and adaptability over the highly specialized but potentially vulnerable strategies that had characterized earlier reef systems. What researchers discovered about this recovery period challenges assumptions about how biological systems respond to major environmental changes. Rather than simply returning to previous organizational patterns, life developed innovative solutions that created entirely new possibilities for ecosystem development. The innovations that emerged during the post-transition period include many of the fundamental biological strategies that continue to characterize modern ecosystems. More efficient respiratory systems, improved thermoregulation, and enhanced reproductive strategies all trace their origins to evolutionary developments during this crucial period. Perhaps most significantly, the transition period established the foundation for the evolutionary radiations that would eventually produce the biological diversity we see in the modern world. The dinosaur lineages that would dominate terrestrial ecosystems for over 150 million years, the mammalian ancestors that would eventually give rise to human civilization, and many of the marine groups that populate today's oceans all emerged from survivor lineages that navigated this critical transition. The lessons from 252 million years ago have direct relevance for understanding our contemporary world and the environmental challenges we face today. While the specific mechanisms differ, the Permian-Triassic transition demonstrates fundamental principles about how Earth's environmental systems respond to rapid change. Climate scientists study this period because it provides a natural laboratory for understanding how greenhouse gas increases affect global environmental systems. The rate and magnitude of atmospheric changes during the transition offer insights into the sensitivity of Earth's climate system to chemical modifications, helping researchers understand potential responses to modern atmospheric changes. Marine biologists find particular value in studying how ocean chemistry responded to changing atmospheric conditions during this ancient period. The mechanisms that affected marine ecosystems 252 million years ago operate according to the same physical and chemical principles that govern contemporary ocean systems. The research also provides perspective on the relationship between environmental change and biological innovation. While the transition period presented significant challenges for existing life forms, it also created opportunities for evolutionary development that ultimately expanded the possibilities for biological diversity. What emerges from studying this ancient transition is an understanding of Earth as a dynamic system where environmental and biological components interact in complex ways that can produce rapid, far-reaching changes. The transition demonstrates that Earth's systems include feedback mechanisms that can amplify initial changes, but also reveals the remarkable capacity of life to develop innovative responses to environmental challenges. The story of this ancient turning point reminds us that Earth's history includes periods of dramatic transformation that have repeatedly reshaped the trajectory of biological evolution. Understanding these processes provides crucial context for interpreting modern environmental changes and developing strategies for managing contemporary challenges. Most importantly, the research reveals that while environmental changes can present serious challenges to existing biological systems, they also create opportunities for innovation and adaptation. Life's response to this ancient crisis included not just survival strategies, but genuine innovations that expanded the range of possibilities for future evolutionary development. The Permian-Triassic transition ultimately represents a testament to life's remarkable resilience and creativity in the face of environmental challenge. It shows us that Earth's biological systems have repeatedly demonstrated the capacity to not just survive dramatic changes, but to use those challenges as catalysts for developing new approaches to the fundamental processes that sustain life. In studying Earth's deadliest turning point, we discover that the most profound transformations often create the foundation for entirely new chapters in the story of life on our planet. This ancient transition reminds us that change, while challenging, also creates the conditions for innovation, adaptation, and the emergence of possibilities that might never have developed under stable conditions. The deep time perspective that geological research provides helps us understand that dramatic environmental changes have been part of Earth's story throughout its history, and that life has repeatedly demonstrated remarkable capacity for finding creative solutions to seemingly insurmountable challenges. This knowledge provides both humility about the magnitude of natural processes and confidence in life's extraordinary ability to adapt, innovate, and thrive.